Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Wednesday, another 11 a.m. I'm excited. I'm literally excited because there's beautiful questions today, and I can bring in some new stuff from the book as well. So I'm looking forward to the questions. As always, bring them on, and let's get started right away.
Hi, so last week we talked about how bodyweight exercises are awesome for shoulders and for building shoulder muscles, etc. This week we want to focus on the hips. What is your take on bodyweight exercises for hips?
Okay, so first things first. I'm going to tell you a little story that basically travels around a ship, Metallica, the band, and the Beatles. Um, so the hip needs something very specific. And that's where Metallica comes in, which is it needs a neutral hip whenever it's loaded, position of a neutral hip whenever it's loaded with weight. So nothing else matters. That's the Metallica connection. We can now play the song in the background so everybody has a nice picture in their head. Okay, so we have to start with neutral hip once the hip gets loaded. That's first and foremost. And that's where literally everything starts downstream. Let me bring in something new today, um, which is the foot, which is the anchor for me for the hips, because there's no movement happening without both of your feet on the ground while being loaded. No feet on the ground, no movement, no tension, no tension, no Greg. That's just how the world works. You can assess anything you want with you on your back or with your legs up in the air, testing angles. Like that's brilliant. That's fine. That's whatever you want to do. Keep doing it. But if you want to learn position with tension, then your feet have to be on the ground for your hips. Um, so the theme of the hips is, and that's where the Beatles come in, is let it be. Let the foot be a foot. There's an overcorrection happening in the foot right now, which I don't really know why it's happening. I have an answer to this, but maybe next time. So we're going to talk about the hips. We're going to talk about the foot. Or we're going to have talk about everything that happens in between because that's literally what a bodyweight exercise for the hips are. The ship story is super simple. Think about your hips. So your hips are the most important thing. Forget about your spine, forget about your shoulders, forget about your ankles, forget about your knees, forget about your wrists, forget about your elbows. The hips, the neutral hip under load is the only thing you should care about. Nothing else matters. Trust me. So that's why the ship comes in. So think about your hips as a ship being in a harbor, right? So there's still waters. You're doing all the maintaining work. You like everything's fine. You don't have to even set the set everything up for leaving the harbor. And that's where most of the stuff is happening right now for the hips. It's in calm waters. It's in with corrective exercises. It's with mobility work, but that's not how the hip is used in real life. Real life is when the ship's at open sea, there's no more calm waters, there's big waves, there's pirates, there's whales, there's a lot of stuff happening, and your hips have to be ready. There's no way you can start fixing your hips while or your ship while you're at open sea or while you're under load. It's just not happening. Things have to function. You have to take care of it before you actually hit the open waters, before shit hits the fan. All right. So what's my point here? The point is there's a three-step sequence of how you should start approaching your hips. I'm not saying never do bodyweight exercises. I'm for your hips. I'm saying this is the last thing you should do for your hips. The first thing you should do for your hips is load it, get it to neutral position, and walk, which is, in my world, something like a carry, for example, a frame carry, a sandbag carry, whatever you want to call it. And what is the point? How do you get to neutral hips? It's literally super simple. It's engage your glutes. All right. That's super fancy coaching, but hear me out. In an ideal world, your glutes never disengage while you use your hips. Of course, it's going to disengage when you move somewhere, but that's further down the line. Loading first, then you're going to move your loaded hips somewhere, like down and up. And the last thing is you're going to do is do bodyweight exercises with no loaded hips. So that's the basic sequence. And there's something coming in now, going back to the foot, which is the my unfocus on rotation. I'm not denying focus. I'm not denying that rotation is happening at the hips whatsoever. It is happening. Trust me, I'm not a tinfoil hat guy, but it's we have the order wrong. So try something for me right now. Stand up, squeeze your glutes as hard as you can, and watch what your big thigh bone does. You can actually do it right now. So once you stand up, squeeze your glutes as hard as you can, you'll realize something. Your big thigh bone is going to rotate to the outside, right? Without you thinking or doing rotation or whatsoever. So engaging the glutes gets you to a new hip with the glute squeeze, gets you to excellent rotation, which is, I fully agree on, the best and most stable position for your hips. There's no denying about that. My point is, we have to get there with tension and not with rotation. That's my whole point. With position and tension, and now with focusing on rotation. Because what happens when you focus on rotation? There's something weird happening with your foot, right? Think about squatting and you hearing stuff like rotate your whatever, rotate your hip, yeah, it doesn't matter. That automatically leads to displacement, maybe not from the beginning, but once it gets loaded. So you created excellent rotation. Awesome. What happens once your hips move down and you actually have to apply tension? You're either going to roll to the outside or your foot is going to collapse towards the inside. That's what's happening. That's just because tension with position is first. And that's why body weight exercises for your hips are actually the hardest thing to do, because there's very little external stimulus that you can work against. It's just you and your body. Let's take the lunges, for example. I have yet to see somebody doing lunges without doing either rolling of the foot in, excuse me, or the knee rolling in, or something weird happening with the hips, right? No matter the level of the athlete. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're weak or not, if you're fit or not, like everything is doing it. And that's where what we've been working on for the last 15 years is, okay, we have to reverse the order. Load the hips first, load the neutral hips first. Then we're going to take that loaded neutral hip and move it somewhere like in a squat or in a deadlift. And the last thing we're going to do is, once we've learned that position with tension, then we can actually do body weight exercise, and then they make more sense, because then you can do a lot of reps. You can literally, maybe that's not the right word, but maybe then your body memorizes the position with tension under a lot of stress, and then the hips can execute it, lower body can execute it through body weight movements. And guess what? That's what we've been doing for a couple of years now. And guess what? It's working, because otherwise I wouldn't say it. It's not a weird theory, a weird idea of mine. We've tested this, and it was actually really hard for me, because it's the opposite of what I learned, quote unquote, because bodyweight exercise, like the easiest exercise, like everybody can do it. It's like, yes, that is true, but it doesn't mean it's the best way to start. So it doesn't matter if it's easy to do. It matters if it gives you progress or not. That's something we have to take more care of while training normal people in strength training. Is, yes, there's less risk maybe involved, but there's also zero progress involved. It's awesome if you let your client sorry, if you let your clients do bodyweight lunges, and it's not wrong, but there's a faster and a better way of how to get that person stronger, especially long term. So that's why I say bodyweight exercises suck for your hips. Do them as a last step of developing your hips.
Okay, and last week you also talked about the fact that especially when someone wants to build muscle, there's like no way to go with body weight exercises, right? So it's like even or maybe for like complete newbies, but like for anyone above that, it's like fruitless.
Okay, so that's the weird thing for me because everybody who's been in training for like more than 3 years knows that you cannot gain substantial muscle mass by doing lower body weight exercises.
Mhm.
And the opposite is true for the upper body. You can build a lot of muscles by just doing body weight exercises. And we won't go into the details why that's not happening, but it's a reality. And this is not about getting bodybuilder legs or something crazy. This is just growing a little bit more of the big muscles that we need to stabilize the joints that are maybe aching or are limiting us from reaching whatever our goals, progress, PRs, whatever you want to call it. That alone should tell us, okay, maybe there's a different way needed to train the lower body than is needed for for the upper body.